Well, welcome to all of you to the opening episode of the Notre Dame Alumni Association Affinities Group shared read of the book Black Domers. And with hope each of you have had a chance to obtain it and to read parts of it, if not all of it. We have three outstanding and distinguished graduates of the University of Notre Dame, Black alumni. But before we talk to them, I just want to set the purpose of our shared read, and that is to celebrate each of the essayists and contributors to these interviews that you'll see over the weeks. And by the way, each week you'll meet new panelists from different decades of their existence and participation as students at the University of Notre Dame. That's one purpose, to celebrate them, and we're looking forward to that. But given the reckoning behind the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and others, there is this awakening of interest in our nation and particularly at the University of Notre Dame about what can be improved at the University of Notre Dame, in our nation, and indeed throughout the world. Now, with that setting, let me just say that I am David Krashna. I'm a 1971 graduate of the University of Notre Dame. I'm the co-editor of Black Domers, African-American Students of Notre Dame in Their Own Words, which is the full title. And I met my friend, Don Wycliff. Don, I just realized yesterday, more than 50 years ago. And some people aren't even 50 years of age. It's amazing. Would you introduce yourself at this time?
Sure, I'm Don Wycliff, member of the class of 1969. I live now in South Bend and am retired. I was a journalist throughout my career.
An outstanding journalist as well. In fact, he was nominated one time when he was at the New York Times, if I'm correct, Don, for a Pulitzer Prize at some point or other.
Yeah.
Now, with that, let me start with the introductions. And I'm looking right now at James Riley. And James, we're going to put you to work because we have a trifold motivation for asking you to be here today. And we'll get to that in a moment. But I'm just hoping that with all the work we're going to put you to in this interview, that you won't send us a bill.
No, not at all. Not at all.
You won't do that. Okay, good man. Well, Clyde, you definitely deservedly have the honors of starting. You are a 1951 master's graduate of the University of Notre Dame. And let me just read the beginning of your essay, if you'll allow me. Hurtling through the black night in late August 1949, amid the rumbling of the swaying coach and the high-pitched screeching of steel wheels on iron rails, I lazily scanned occasional distant lights of farmhouses and towns, wondering how my new adventure would unfold. Coming from New Orleans, sir, what was that adventure like at the University of Notre Dame?
Well, it's kind of mixed. I came there basically with the purpose to obtain a graduate degree in physics. That was my purpose. I had no other intention as far as making changes in the school or whatever. I think I was successful in doing so. I did encounter some unexpected problems, which some things were positive, others were negative. I can mention a couple of those. Basically, I chosen to live off campus because for economic reasons. So I did not immerse myself with close contact with other students, other white students. At the time, there were 6 black students on campus. Myself, Charlie Bell, Al Adams, Tony Horn, George Rhodes. Who else?
Aaron Dyson.
So basically, during the day, I would attend class. I was not a part of a study group. The department head, Father Bolger, in physics, was very cordial, but he was distant. He never showed any interest in either my success or failure. My professors were were either friendly or just the ones who were friendly were my mechanics teacher and the one in thermodynamics. But they were not friends. There was no social contact between myself and other students, other professors. So my activity there was to go to classes, go to the library after that, study, then go home where I was living in rooming house. So it was pretty simple. Otherwise I had no direct contact with other. I would see another Black student, other than my roommate, Charlie Bell, maybe once a month. There were 6 out of 5,000 students here. The only negative experience I had was when I was called in by a university officer official to reprimand me and threaten me if I did not desist in pursuing with an affidavit against a dance hall operator. I and some other local Black townspeople had filed an affidavit for his arrest for breaking the law and discriminating against Blacks. So evidently the DA called the school and told the school that I was being used by people in town because I was a student at Notre Dame. And so the official told me he didn't want the school involved in a civil rights demonstration mess, so he wanted me to drop it. And if I didn't, then he couldn't guarantee that I graduate. Well, that kind of outraged me because that was all not true. I was not being used by anybody. So that was the only negative experience I had. The other experiences were kind of passive, And so I decided then, after meeting with him, that that was not a place for me at Notre Dame. I decided just to complete my course study and graduate with a master's and leave. But that's my experience.
Thank you, Clyde. And that's Clyde Jupiter. And Clyde, you didn't return to the University of Notre Dame for 58 years, and we might get into that later on.
Right, yeah.
Well, Booker Rice, you may have taken a train, but your train ride wasn't very long. It came from Chicago, Illinois. Tell us about your experience. Booker Rice.
Well, hi there, Ryder. Good to see you. My experience was primarily all good. I can only think of a couple of incidents where it was a negative experience. And one is recited in the essay regarding the restaurant situation in South Bend. On a football weekend, the restaurant we always went to was nothing but a pizza restaurant, quite frankly. And we often went there with a group of other white kids. And on this football weekend, it's very crowded. And I went, and Tommy Hawkins, who unfortunately was no longer with us, class of 59, was a basketball player there. We both went there. And when we got there, they asked us for our reservations. We said, what reservation? We've been here many times. We never had a reservation. They would not let us in. That was the biggest disappointment I had, but that was South Bend and Notre Dame. I had on my Notre Dame jacket, so it was clear that I was a student, so did Tommy. So anyway, that word got back to campus, and Paul Horning, who at the time was the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, heard about it, and he wanted to go down and create a problem, so we can't have that. And Father Hesburgh, thank goodness, took it from there, spoke with him, and that never happened again because Father Hesburgh being Father Hesburgh. The only other situation is very minor, and I mentioned this to David the other day when we talked on the phone. That was a situation, I think I was a freshman in Kavanaugh Hall. And we had this kid who, I think he was from someplace like Iowa, something in the Midwestern rural area. And I noticed he always stared at me. Mm-hmm. He kept staring in the dining hall, in the dorm. So I finally asked him, why are you staring at me? He said, oh, I'm sorry. He said, but you're not like the rest of them. Mm. I tried to educate him, but you guys might have experienced that too. Those are the two negative experiences. On the positive side, there were lots of them. I had lots of white classmates who were friends. Matter of fact, knowing that we were going to be on this Zoom session, I went through my old files and I found something here. This is says Sons of Aaron, University of Notre Dame. And they got names on there such as Dick Prendergast, who was president, Booker Rice, who was a committeeman. I was in a club, basically all white Irish guys. And people used to tease me as being the Black Irishman. And it was a great, close relationship. And being from Chicago, a lot of the kids were from Chicago. So we connected both during the school year and oftentimes in the summertime. And also later on in my business career in the insurance industry, it was also helpful having those kind of connections. That was really critical in me breaking a lot of barriers and a very, at the time going back into the 50s and 60s, very white environment, the business world, particularly the insurance industry, financial area. And knowing these guys who supported me, that moved me up the ladder as being one of the first executives in the insurance industry to reach the officer level. So I owe a lot to Notre Dame. And even today, I'm retired. I've been retired now for over 20 years. I live in Sarasota, Florida. They call it paradise. And it is a great place to live. Sometimes we have hurricanes, but other than that, it's a paradise. But people, even friends here, when they kid me a lot. Here comes the Notre Dame guy, you know, the domer. So the Notre Dame thing has stuck with me in a very positive way all of my life.
Booker, thank you very much. And we'd be remiss if we didn't point out that you were a star hurdler, a track star at the University of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's correct. That was about 30 or 40 pounds ago and many years ago.
And that's why you had that Notre Dame sports jacket on when you went to that restaurant where
yes,
he used to serve you. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. That helped.
Okay.
You know, to that point, I think a lot of times, and I've been reading some of the complaints that some of the kids have in today's environment. It seems like athletes, and I was one, as you indicated, had kind of a hero bubble around them. You were treated differently, and so that it just meant a lot in terms of almost like, I'm sorry, my phone is ringing. You were like a hero to the kids. You know, Notre Dame was a football school, track school, basketball. Athletes were put on another level, and I think people admire you just because you're an athlete. And even today, if I get into a Notre Dame discussion, did you play sports?
Yes, that's it.
You know, it's almost 60 some years later.
Same.
The question.
Right. Well, Booker, thank you. And now, James Riley, you're a 1994 graduate of the University of Notre Dame.
Yes,
and
sir.
we have you in this interview of the 40s and 50s. And look, you didn't have to take a train to the campus. In fact, you didn't even have to take a bus if you didn't really want to. You could have walked possibly because you're a South Bend resident.
That's right.
But James, we've asked you, and I'm so pleased you have joined us, and I've got to know you over the months now. You are the nephew of the first female Black graduate of the Notre Dame, a master's degree graduate, and that's Goldie Ivory, who we have a profile in the book early on in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you are so proud of your aunt. We'd like to hear your reminiscence of what you understand her experience was at Notre Dame. We also want to hear about your experience at Notre Dame, as well as if you would tell us your opinion of the relationship between Notre Dame Black students and South Bend community members over the years. That's a big, tall order, but I know you can handle it.
That's
James,
right.
go right ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you so much to you and Don for having me here on the call. I feel honored to be with Clyde and Booker and yourselves on this call, and this project is a wonderful thing to take on. So much appreciated for your time today. Aunt Goldie, it's all in her name. She was golden. To us, she floated. She was everyone's pride and joy in the family. she lived right there on East Bissell, right off of Eddy Street, just right by campus. So we could go to her house, and sometimes we'd take walks to campus when I was a little boy, and she'd, show me some of the buildings where she had classes. And I think that's where I got just such an inspiration and desire to attend the university myself. She was like my North Star. And I just remember going into her home and going into her office where she had tons of pictures and news articles of herself being in the South Bend Tribune and in the Elkhart Truth newspaper, and then that big old golden diploma that she had on the wall, her Notre Dame diploma, just brought me joy. And we really miss Aunt Goldie, but we know she's leaving us tons of memories in her honor. So Goldie Ivory, yes, class of, I believe it was 56, I want to say. Yeah, just a cherish of a family. And myself, just local guy, like you said. I probably could have rode a skateboard to campus. I was so close to campus. I had a great 4 years, like Clyde and Booker. I think that the positives far outweigh the negatives in terms of my experience. I think of a few of the negatives, and those are the ones that unfortunately stick out. Because that you think of Notre Dame as a place that's untarnished, but then a few episodes do rear their ugly heads. I remember specifically, if I can go into a couple of specifics before talking about the relationship of Notre Dame Black students in South Bend. My freshman year, 1990, I don't know if you remember Bobby Brown, the singer Bobby Brown, but he had a kind of a Gumby haircut style. And so I emulated that my senior year. And so moving into the dorm, when I met the priest, the rector of the dorm, the first thing he said to me, he asked me if I liked rap and if I could write a rap for him entitled "My Way or the Highway." So I didn't know how to quite take that, if it was a racist comment or if he was trying to be funny or trying to make me feel at home. But that kind of stuck out to me because he didn't ask any of the other white guys that were moving in the same section that question. I also remember playing basketball freshman year at Steppen Center with two of my other black friends. One was from New Orleans and one was from Washington, D.C. And the Notre Dame security came up to us and said that, this is only for students. And there were tons of other white kids that were playing right there as well. Didn't approach them and asked if we were students and asked if we were asked to see our IDs. And that just, this was freshman year, and that kind of took us aback. As a matter of fact, one of my friends started crying because, he had worked so hard. He was a valedictorian of his high school in New Orleans, and he worked so hard to get to Notre Dame, and then this is what he is met with in our freshman year. So those instances really stuck out to me as being negative. But again, the positives far outweighed those negatives. In terms of the relationship between South Bend and Notre Dame's black students, I can't say enough about how much outreach there is amongst the community and especially the black students here. And I try to emulate that as well by reaching out to current black students to say, hey, can we get together? This is non-coronavirus, non-COVID era, but just to see how they're doing, check in with them. I know the same happened when Aunt Goldie was on campus. Clyde, you mentioned it in your essays, how people just reached out to you and you almost had to turn down invitations to go have dinner with families because they know that there's not too many black students at Notre Dame, so they want to treat you like family and say, hey, South Bend is my home, but it's also your home too. Even if you're here for 4 years, this is your home and we welcome you.
Amen to that. I had that same experience.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I just want one thing. When Charlie and I first got to Notre Dame, the first week that we got settled in our rooming house, a lady in the neighborhood came to us and told us, you boys give me your laundry once a week and I'll do it for you. I'm going to charge you 50 cents a piece. And that's what she did. As it was her way of contributing to our welfare.
Mm.
Thank you, Clyde. And James, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thanks for your participation in the Black at ND podcast that Don and I were honored to be involved with recently. You're doing a real good job.
Thank you. I'm glad you
You're
guys
welcome.
like that.
Hey, Don, what would you like to ask?
I'd like to ask Clyde, in your essay, you mentioned how the white students you encountered were friendly, but not friends.
Right.
And you said, talk about that if you would.
Okay.
And you mentioned inhibitions on your side and their side.
Right. Well, you know, coming from New Orleans in the 1940s, that was a separation of races. And I found the same kind of thing in South Bend. South Bend was a southern town too. The typical interaction between whites and blacks would be based upon a business transaction. It would be either a black person dealing with a transaction with a white clerk or a white official. The transaction would be something regarding business, whether a sale or a purchase or something like that, or an application or something. But there was never any desire on either party to transform that into a social encounter or to a business partnership or anything like that. It was simply, you know, a commercial transaction. There was no interest in any other relationship. Now, the only other thing is that when I was in school, in high school and college, I went to Catholic schools, had both black and white professors. I was very comfortable with them, but we only had black students. So I was never in a class with a white student. And I never had any communication with whites, except from some commercial transaction. You go into a store to buy something, like that. So at Notre Dame, I just came there with the intent not to socialize, but just to study, to get my degree, and to leave.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect that South Bend would be any different from Louisiana. As a matter of fact, an example, there was a black barber in South Bend who only cut white hair. If you're a black woman to get a haircut, you got to go around and come after hours at night. He would cut your hair. So there were things like that, and so I didn't really expect any more from the campus. And actually, I was staying. If I had lived on campus in a dormitory, I would have had a very different experience. But I stayed in town to stretch some dollars. We were paying $7 a week apiece for a room. with kitchen privileges, so that was a pretty good deal money-wise.
Yeah. Can I ask both you, Booker, and Clyde, your I'm sorry, are you familiar with the petition circulated by the current black students? And what's your feeling about it?
Yeah, actually, I received it. I guess Dave sent it to me. I was just surprised because there's been 70 years of blacks attending Notre Dame, and I would have thought that the school would have worked out those problems over the 70 years. I was surprised to see that there's such a collection of pretty drastic issues that is still not resolved. And I think that they should have been attended to a long time ago, many years ago, but they have not. So I think that the school, if the school wants to pretend to be open to all races, it needs to do something drastic. It can't keep doing what it's been doing the last 70 years.
And Booker, your reaction.
Well, my feelings on it, I just got a chance to review this in the last few days. I was not even aware of the petition, but I have read it. Before I answer that, let me just say this. In the Black Domer book, Tommy Hawkins and I had a long discussion about this when we read in there several of the students, particularly in recent years, in the 2000s, I believe, told stories about some of the racist incidents that they had. And Tom and I discussed this. You know, we don't remember on campus experiencing this. And again, as I intimated earlier, I don't know if that was because I was an athlete and he was an athlete, and we were put on kind of another plane. I don't know. I assume that may have something to do with it. But I just feel so heartbroken when I read that article in the, first of all, the Doma. Then when I read the petition, I was even more bothered by that. But I'm not surprised that given what's going on in the country with this, you know, social injustices out there, this systemic racism. It's just out there. All started again by George Paul and that policeman in Minneapolis. That made everybody sick. But back in the days when Clyde and I went to school, they didn't have cell phones with cameras on them. So a lot of people were not aware of that. As a matter of fact, they were probably going on 10 years ago. We just didn't know it because it wasn't out there. So I am bothered by what's going on the campus now. And I would do anything that I could do to help remedy that situation in a positive way.
I'd like to add, you know, to keep doing what they've been doing for the past 7 years is not going to make a change. If you really want to effect change and get rid of a lot of these negative issues, one option would be to get a Black president who is capable and who is committed to solve the problem. There are people like that. And perhaps also some Blacks on the trustees board too. You have to do that. I don't know whether the school has been concerned that as far as trying to raise the number of Black students and employment of more Black professors, they may feel that there could be an objection from some of the wealthy donors that they want to preserve. But I think it's time to make some drastic changes there. If the school would want to consider having a Black president, I'd be happy to recommend someone I think would do a good job.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
David?
Don, thank you. Let's ask James. James, you're on campus now.
That's right.
7 years in the Notre Dame Development Office. What's your appraisal? You have a bird's eye view of what's going on with students at Notre Dame. Could you give us your thoughts on the issue that Don brought up?
Sure. Thanks, David. You know, Clyde mentioned something that kind of struck a bell with me in the relationship that Clyde, that you had with the white community. It was very transactional. And I think, you know, over the years, these past 70 years, on and off, our Black students have had the same sort of relationship with the university as well, that they come here for 4 years and they get out. It's very transactional. They come here, they get their degree, and then they leave. And some of them don't ever come back. And I think there's a problem with that. It's a systemic problem because they don't feel that it's their university. They feel that it's a place where, you know, it's a school, and they leave and never come back. Whereas maybe some of the white students, they are third, fourth generation Notre Dame. So they feel it's a part of their blood. It's a part of their ancestry. It's a part of their heritage. It's a part of them. Unfortunately, our students don't have that time. We have 70 years, but we don't have the 3 and 4 decades of Notre Dame in their blood. So I think that's where a lot of this kind of animosity and you know, a need for change has been building up over the years within our Black community here at Notre Dame, that now it's come to a head, and they're seeking some sort of change. They're seeking some sort of feeling of love and respect and support for them. That these petitions have come out. So that's kind of what I'm seeing and diagnosing right now on campus.
Yep.
Thank you, James, and thanks to all our panelists. We could go on, but listen, we got to move to the 1960s pretty soon. But thank you each for your participation, and we'll see you down the line.